Royal Guardian breaks down, after Prince Louis explains why he fears Camilla's child emotional. In his world, hesitation could lead to danger. His job was simple in words but heavy in meaning: protect the royal family at all costs. He had guarded doors, halls, and people of great importance. He had stood still for hours, sometimes days, without complaint. His face was always calm, his posture always firm. No one ever saw him laugh loudly or speak too much. People inside the palace knew him as a shadow, always there, always alert, never involved. When Prince Louis was born, the Guardian was assigned to be part of his security detail. At first, the child was just another duty, a small baby wrapped in blankets, unaware of the world around him. The Guardian stood outside rooms, followed at a distance, and watched quietly. Years passed and the baby became a little boy. The palace filled with the sounds of footsteps, laughter, and voices, but the Guardian stayed the same: silent, careful, controlled. Prince Louis was different from the other children the Guardian had seen. He was curious and expressive. He liked to ask questions and look people in the eyes when they spoke. Sometimes, when he thought no one was watching, he would wave or smile at the staff. The Guardian noticed these small things but never reacted. He reminded himself again and again that attachment was not part of his duty. As Louis grew older, the Guardian began to notice changes. The boy still smiled, but not as often. He still played, but there were moments when he would suddenly stop and look around, as if listening for something no one else could hear. During public events, Louis would sometimes hold onto an adult's hand a little longer than needed. The Guardian saw this but said nothing. Children change, he told himself. It was normal. One afternoon, the palace was quieter than usual. The long corridors echoed less, and the air felt heavy, as if a storm was coming. Prince Louis had been walking ahead with a small group, but suddenly he slowed down. His steps became uneven. He looked over his shoulder, then down at the floor. The Guardian noticed immediately. He adjusted his position, staying close but not too close. They reached a quiet area near the gardens. The sunlight filtered through tall windows, painting soft patterns on the floor. Usually, Louis would run ahead at this point, excited to see the flowers or birds. But this time he stopped completely. He stood still, his shoulders slightly tense. The Guardian paused behind him, alert. Something was wrong. "Are you tired?" someone asked gently from a distance. Louis shook his head but did not speak. His hands were clenched into small fists. The Guardian watched his reflection in the glass. The boy's face looked serious, far too serious for his age. His eyes carried something unfamiliar, fear mixed with confusion. The Guardian had seen fear before. He had seen it in crowds, during emergencies, and in moments of sudden danger. But seeing it in a child's eyes, especially a child he was sworn to protect, felt different. It unsettled him in a way he could not explain. They continued walking, but Louis stayed quiet. He did not talk about games or school. He did not ask questions. Every few steps he glanced around as if expecting something to happen. The Guardian's instincts sharpened. He scanned the area carefully, checking every corner, every movement. Everything seemed safe. Too safe. Inside the palace, people were busy with their usual tasks. Conversations flowed, schedules were discussed, and plans were made. Life continued as normal. But the Guardian felt a strange tension building. He could sense that whatever was troubling Prince Louis was not something visible. It was something hidden, growing silently. Later that day, during a short break, Louis sat alone on a bench near the garden doors. His feet barely touched the ground. He swung them slowly, staring at nothing in particular. The Guardian stood nearby, pretending not to notice, yet fully focused on the boy. For a moment, Louis looked up. His eyes met the Guardian's. It was brief, but it felt heavy. There was a question in that look, one the Guardian was not prepared to answer. The boy looked away quickly, as if afraid he had already said too much without speaking at all. The Guardian felt an unexpected tightness in his chest. He pushed the feeling away. This was not his place. He was not family, he was not a counselor, he was a guardian. Still, his eyes never left the boy. As the day went on, Louis became quieter. During dinner, he ate slowly. He barely touched his food. When someone spoke to him, he responded politely but without energy. The guardian noticed how often the boy glanced toward the adults, as if measuring their attention. Each glance seemed filled with uncertainty. That night, as the palace lights dimmed and footsteps softened, the guardian remained at his post. He stood outside the sleeping quarters, just as he had done countless times before. But his thoughts would not settle. He kept seeing Louis's eyes from earlier that day. Fear did not belong there. Confusion did not belong there. The guardian thought about his own childhood, something he rarely allowed himself to remember. He had grown up learning to be strong early. He had learned to stay quiet, to endure, to observe rather than speak. He remembered how fear often lived in silence, growing stronger when ignored. The thought made his grip tighten slightly. Inside the room, Prince Louis lay awake. He stared at the ceiling, listening to distant sounds. He did not cry. He did not call out. He simply lay there thinking. The guardian did not know this yet, but something had been forming in the boy's mind for a long time, a worry too big for his small heart. As the hours passed, the guardian realized something important. Protection was not always about stopping physical danger. Sometimes, the greatest threats were invisible. They lived in thoughts, in misunderstandings, in fears that no one noticed because children were expected to be happy. He did not yet know what Prince Louis was afraid of. He did not know the reason behind the silence or the heavy looks, but one thing was clear: this was no passing mood. Something was weighing on the child deeply. The guardian stood straighter, his expression as calm as ever. To anyone watching, he looked the same as always, strong, steady, unbreakable. But inside, a quiet shift had begun. A realization that this assignment, this child, would change him in ways no training ever could. That day ended like any other on the surface. Lights were turned off, doors were closed, guards changed shifts. Yet beneath the calm routine, something had cracked open. A silent understanding that the boy he protected was carrying a fear that needed to be heard. And the guardian, for the first time in his career, knew that his duty was about to go far beyond standing watch. The next morning began like any other inside the palace. Sunlight entered through tall windows, and the quiet sounds of footsteps echoed through long halls. Staff members moved with purpose, following schedules that rarely changed. The guardian returned to his post early, standing straight, his expression calm and unreadable. Yet inside, his thoughts were unsettled. The memory of Prince Louis's silent fear from the day before stayed with him. Prince Louis appeared later than usual. He walked slowly, his shoulders slightly hunched, as if carrying a weight no one could see. He greeted people politely, but his smile did not reach his eyes. The guardian noticed immediately. He had trained himself to observe details others missed. A change in breathing, a shift in posture, a look held too long or avoided completely. Everything about the boy told him that the worry had not faded overnight. During breakfast, Louis sat quietly, pushing his food around on the plate. He listened when spoken to, nodded when expected, but rarely spoke. The guardian stood nearby, scanning the room, yet his attention kept returning to the child. He wondered how long this silence had been growing. Days, weeks, perhaps even longer. Later that morning, Louis was scheduled for a short walk in the gardens. The weather was gentle and the flowers were in full bloom. Usually, this was one of the prince's favorite times of the day. He liked to name the colors, watch birds, and ask endless questions. Today, however, he walked beside the guardian without enthusiasm. His hands were clasped together and his steps were careful. They followed a familiar path, away from the busier parts of the palace. The air felt calm and the sounds of the world seemed distant. For a while, neither of them spoke. The guardian remained professional, allowing the silence to exist. He had learned that forcing words often made things worse. After several minutes, Louis slowed down. He looked at the ground, then up at the sky, as if searching for the right words. Finally, he stopped walking altogether. "Can I ask you something?" Louis said quietly. The guardian was surprised by the directness of the question. He turned slightly, keeping his tone gentle and respectful. "Of course." Louis hesitated. His fingers twisted together, and he took a small breath. "Do people change when new children come into a family?" The question caught the guardian off guard. It was not what he expected. He had prepared himself for many possibilities: fear of crowds, fear of rules, fear of attention. But this was something deeper. "People can change," the guardian replied carefully. "But that doesn't always mean something bad." Louis nodded slowly, but his expression did not lighten. He continued walking, and the guardian followed. After a few steps, Louis spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "What if someone new takes your place?" The guardian felt a sudden tightness in his chest. He realized that this was not a simple question. This was not curiosity. This was fear, real fear. "No one can replace you," the guardian said softly, choosing his words with care. "Everyone has their own place." Louis stopped again. This time he looked directly at the guardian. His eyes were serious, filled with confusion and worry far beyond his years. "But what if they forget?" Louis asked. "What if they don't mean to, but they do?" The guardian remained silent for a moment. He understood now that the boy had been thinking about this for a long time. These were not sudden thoughts. They were questions built from observation, from listening, from feeling shifts he did not understand. Louis looked away. "I heard people talking," he said. "Not to me." "Just near me." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "They talked about Camilla's child, about the future, about changes." The guardian listened closely. He did not interrupt. He did not rush. He allowed Louis the space to speak. "They didn't say my name," Louis continued. "But I felt like I was invisible." His voice trembled slightly. "I don't want to be invisible." The guardian felt something stir inside him. He had spent years protecting others from visible threats, but this was different. This was a child fearing something he could not fight or run from. "You are not invisible," the guardian said firmly, yet kindly. "Not to me." Louis looked up, surprised. For the first time that day, there was a small change in his expression, not happiness but relief. Just a little. They continued walking side by side. The silence that followed was no longer heavy. It felt necessary, allowing Louis to gather his thoughts. After a while, Louis spoke again. "If someone else comes, will they still need me?" The guardian stopped. He knelt slightly so he could look Louis in the eyes. His voice was calm, steady. "You are needed because you are you. That never changes." Louis studied his face, as if testing the truth of his words. Children often sense honesty more clearly than adults realize. After a moment, Louis nodded. As they returned toward the palace, the guardian felt a shift within himself. He had crossed an invisible line. He was no longer just observing. He was involved. That afternoon, Louis seemed lighter. He spoke more, asked a few small questions, even smiled once or twice. It was not a complete change, but it was something. The guardian remained nearby, quietly attentive. As evening approached, the palace returned to its usual rhythm. Dinner was served. Conversations filled the halls, but the guardian could not forget what he had heard. That night, as he stood at his post, he reflected on the conversation. He realized that children notice more than adults think. They hear tone, sense tension, and feel shifts long before anyone explains them. Left alone, those feelings grow into fears. The guardian understood now that Prince Louis was not afraid of a person. He was afraid of losing his place, of being forgotten, of becoming unimportant. And that fear, once planted, could grow silently unless someone listened. As the lights dimmed and the palace grew quiet, the guardian made a quiet decision. He would listen more. He would watch not just for danger but for signs of sadness. Because sometimes the most important protection was not physical at all. He did not know what the coming days would bring, but one thing was clear. Prince Louis had trusted him with a fear he had not shared with anyone else. And that trust would change everything. The days that followed were calm on the surface, but something had changed beneath the routine. Prince Louis seemed quieter than before, yet there was a new awareness in his eyes. He watched people closely, noticing small details others ignored. The guardian noticed this too. He stayed nearby, more attentive than ever, not just to movements and sounds, but to moods and silences. During lessons, Louis listened carefully but sometimes drifted into thought. His pencil paused in midair, his eyes fixed on nothing. When asked a question, he answered politely, though his voice carried a hint of uncertainty. The guardian stood at the edge of the room, his posture firm but his focus sharp. He had learned that silence often spoke louder than words. One afternoon, after lessons ended early, Louis asked if they could sit in the smaller garden near the old trees. It was a quiet place, rarely used, filled with soft shadows and gentle light. The guardian agreed and took his position nearby, allowing the boy space while remaining close enough to hear him if needed. Louis sat on a low stone bench. He traced lines in the dirt with the tip of his shoe. For a while, neither of them spoke. The wind moved gently through the leaves above, creating a soft sound that felt comforting. "I think about things a lot," Louis said suddenly. The guardian turned slightly, signaling he was listening. "Things I don't always understand," Louis continued. "Sometimes people smile, but their eyes don't. Sometimes they talk, but they don't say everything." The guardian nodded slowly. "That's true," he said. "People don't always say what they feel." Louis sighed. "I try to listen anyway." The guardian felt a quiet sadness at those words. A child should not feel the need to read between the lines so carefully. He waited, letting Louis continue at his own pace. "I hear names," Louis said. "Plans, changes." He paused, his voice lower now. "When they talk about the future, I don't know where I fit." The guardian felt the weight of those words settle heavily in his chest. He remembered his own childhood again, moments when he felt unsure of his place in the world. He had learned to stay strong by staying quiet. But he wondered now if that silence had cost him something. "You fit because you are part of the present," the guardian said gently. "And the present matters." Louis looked up at him. "Does it?" "Yes," the guardian answered without hesitation. "Very much." Louis looked back down, thinking. "Sometimes I feel like I have to be very good, very quiet, so no one gets tired of me." The guardian's breath caught slightly. That was a fear he recognized too well, the fear of being a burden, of being tolerated instead of loved. "You don't have to disappear to be accepted," the guardian said firmly. "You don't have to earn your place by being silent." Louis frowned. "But what if I make mistakes?" "Everyone makes mistakes," the guardian replied. "Even adults." Louis considered this. "Even you." The guardian allowed a small smile, "Especially me." For a moment, Louis smiled back. It was brief but real. Then his expression grew serious again. "I don't want to feel scared," Louis said, "but I do." The guardian took a slow breath. He realized this was the moment when honesty mattered most. "Being scared doesn't mean you are weak," he said. "It means you care." Louis nodded slowly, as if that thought brought him some comfort. As the afternoon faded, they returned inside. The palace halls felt quieter than usual, though they were not empty. Louis walked with a bit more confidence, but the guardian could tell the worry was still there, resting just beneath the surface. That evening, during a small gathering, Louis stayed close to familiar faces. He listened more than he spoke. The guardian watched how the boy reacted to conversations around him. When certain topics came up, Louis's shoulders tightened slightly. When laughter followed, he relaxed a little. The guardian understood now that Louis was constantly measuring his world, trying to understand where he stood. It was a heavy task for someone so young. Later that night, after the palace settled into silence, the guardian stood alone at his post. The quiet gave him space to think. He realized how easily children could feel lost even when surrounded by people. He wondered how many fears went unnoticed simply because they were spoken too softly. He remembered a time long ago when he himself had wanted someone to notice his worries, someone to say, "I see you." No one had. He had learned to stand strong alone. Looking back, he wondered how different things might have been if someone had listened. The next day brought another moment of honesty. During a short break, Louis approached the guardian again, his voice calm but serious. "Do you think grown-ups forget what it's like to be small?" he asked. The guardian thought carefully. "Some do," he said. "Not because they want to, but because life becomes loud." Louis nodded. "It feels loud sometimes." "Yes," the guardian agreed. "It does." They walked together for a while. Louis seemed more willing to talk now, as if sharing his fears had made them slightly less heavy. "I don't want to be brave all the time," Louis said. "I just want to feel safe." The guardian stopped walking. He looked at the boy with quiet determination. "Feeling safe is not too much to ask," he said. That night, as Louis prepared for sleep, he felt calmer than he had in days. The fear had not disappeared, but it no longer felt invisible. Someone had seen it. Someone had listened. Outside the door, the guardian stood as always, alert and steady. But inside him, something had shifted deeply. He understood now that strength was not just about standing firm. It was about being present when someone needed to be heard. Prince Louis was not just afraid of change. He was afraid of losing connection, of being unseen. And the guardian knew that if those fears were ignored, they could grow quietly and painfully. As the palace slept, the guardian made another silent promise. He would not allow the boy's fears to remain unspoken. He would be a steady presence, not just in body but in heart. Because sometimes the greatest protection was letting a child know they were not alone. The day began quietly, but the guardian felt it even before anything happened. There was a heaviness in the air, the kind that came before an emotional storm. Prince Louis appeared calmer on the surface, yet the guardian could sense that something was still unsettled inside him. The boy smiled when spoken to, followed instructions, and moved through the palace as expected. But his eyes still carried questions that had not fully found answers. That afternoon, the palace felt less crowded. Many people were busy elsewhere, and the long corridors seemed almost too quiet. Prince Louis was asked to spend some time reading in a private sitting room near the back gardens. It was a comfortable room with soft light, a few chairs, and shelves filled with books. The guardian stood nearby, just outside the doorway as always. After a while, the guardian noticed that Louis was not reading anymore. The book lay open on his lap, untouched. The boy stared at the window, watching leaves move in the wind. "Do you ever feel tired from being strong?" Louis asked suddenly. The guardian did not answer right away. The question struck deeper than expected. He stepped inside the room and stood at a respectful distance. "Yes," he said finally. "Sometimes." Louis nodded slowly. "I think I am tired." The simplicity of those words carried a great weight. The guardian realized this was not physical tiredness. This was something deeper. Louis closed the book and placed it beside him. His hands rested quietly on his knees. "I try not to think about it," he said, "but it comes back." "What comes back?" the guardian asked gently. "The feeling," Louis replied, "like I don't know where I belong." The guardian felt his chest tighten. He took a slow breath, grounding himself. "You belong here," he said. "You matter." Louis looked at him carefully. "But what if things change?" "Some things change," the guardian said, "but not everything." Louis's voice grew softer. "When people talk about new plans, they sound excited, but no one asks how I feel." That was when something inside the guardian finally gave way. He realized how alone the boy must have felt, carrying worries without knowing who could hear them. The guardian had seen danger in many forms, but this quiet loneliness felt just as serious. Louis continued, unaware of the guardian's inner struggle. "I don't want anyone to feel bad because of me," he said, "so I stay quiet." The guardian lowered himself into a chair nearby. His movements were slower now, more human than professional. "You shouldn't have to carry that alone," he said. Louis looked surprised. "But you carry things alone," he said. The guardian froze. The boy was right. He had always carried everything alone. Fear, responsibility, silence. "Yes," the guardian admitted. "I do." "Does it help?" Louis asked. The guardian felt his eyes burn slightly. He had not expected that question. "No," he said honestly, "not really." For a moment neither of them spoke. The silence was thick but not uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that comes before truth. "I thought grown-ups were never scared," Louis said quietly. "We are," the guardian replied. "We just hide it better," Louis frowned. "Why?" "Because we think we have to," the guardian said. Louis thought about this. "I don't want to hide anymore," he said. "I just want someone to understand." Those words broke the final wall the guardian had built around himself. His vision blurred, and before he could stop it, a tear slipped down his face. He turned his head slightly, embarrassed, but Louis noticed. "Are you crying?" Louis asked softly. The guardian took a deep breath. "Yes," he said. "I am." Louis did not look afraid. He did not look confused. He looked surprised and then something else, relieved. "I didn't know you could," Louis said. "I didn't think I could either," the guardian replied. Another tear followed, then another. The guardian placed a hand over his face, struggling to regain control. Years of training told him to stand up, to hide this moment, but something stronger told him to stay. "I'm sorry," the guardian said quietly. "I didn't mean to do this in front of you." Louis shook his head. "It's okay," he said. "It makes me feel better." The guardian looked at him, stunned. "Why?" "Because it means I'm not strange for feeling scared," Louis said. "If you feel things too, then maybe it's normal." The guardian let out a slow breath, one that felt like it had been trapped inside him for years. "It is normal," he said. "And you are not strange, you are honest." Louis moved a little closer, not touching, just closer. "Will you still stay?" he asked. The guardian straightened, wiping his face. His voice was steady now, filled with quiet strength. "I will stay," he said. "Always." Louis's shoulders relaxed. It was a small change, but the guardian noticed it immediately. The tension eased just a little. "I don't need everything to be perfect," Louis said. "I just need to know I matter." The guardian nodded. "You matter," he said firmly, "more than you know." That moment changed something between them. The guardian was no longer just a silent presence. He was someone who had shared truth, someone who had listened without judgment. As evening approached, Louis seemed lighter. He spoke more freely, laughed softly at a small joke, and even returned to his book for a while. The guardian remained nearby, calmer than he had been in years. That night, after Louis had gone to sleep, the guardian stood at his post as usual, but his thoughts were different now. He understood that strength did not disappear when tears fell. It became deeper, more meaningful. He realized that breaking down had not made him weaker in the boy's eyes. It had made him human. And sometimes that was exactly what a child needed to see. The palace was quiet, but inside the guardian's heart, something new had formed. A bond built not on duty alone, but on trust. Prince Louis slept peacefully that night. For the first time in a long while, the fear felt smaller. Not gone, but manageable. And the guardian, standing watch in the dim light, knew that this moment would stay with him forever. Because sometimes, the strongest thing a person can do is allow themselves to feel, so someone else does not have to feel alone. The morning arrived softly, as if the palace itself was trying not to disturb the peace that had settled overnight. Sunlight moved gently across the walls, and the usual sounds of footsteps and quiet voices returned. The guardian stood at his post, just as he always had. To anyone passing by, he looked the same, calm, steady, focused. But inside, he felt different. Lighter, yet more aware than ever before. Prince Louis came out later than usual. When he did, he looked rested. His eyes were clearer and his movements were less tense. He greeted the people around him with a small but genuine smile. The guardian noticed it immediately. It was not the bright, carefree smile of early childhood, but it was real. That alone felt like progress. As they walked through the hallway together, Louis glanced up at the Guardian. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning," the Guardian replied. There was a warmth in the exchange that had not been there before. No one else noticed it, but both of them did. Throughout the day, Louis seemed more present. During lessons, he paid attention and asked questions without hesitation. When he didn't understand something, he spoke up instead of staying quiet. The Guardian watched closely, his heart steady but full. He knew this change had not come from words alone. It had come from feeling seen. Later, during a short walk outside, Louis slowed his steps and looked around. The garden looked the same as always, but to him, it felt different. "I feel better today," Louis said. "I'm glad," the Guardian replied. "I still think sometimes," Louis added. "But it doesn't feel so heavy." "That's because you didn't keep it all inside," the Guardian said. Louis nodded. "And because you listened." The Guardian said nothing for a moment. He realized how rare it was for anyone to thank him for listening. His job had always been about action, not presence. But now he understood that presence mattered just as much. As the days passed, small moments continued to change. Louis laughed more easily. He still had quiet moments, but they were no longer filled with fear. When he felt unsure, he asked questions. When he felt overwhelmed, he paused instead of pushing himself to disappear. The Guardian stayed close, always alert, but now also emotionally aware. He paid attention to tone, to energy, to silence. He learned that sometimes Louis didn't need answers. He just needed reassurance. One afternoon, they sat together near a window while Louis worked on a small project. The Guardian stood nearby, watching quietly. "Do you think people can promise things without saying them?" Louis asked. "Yes," the Guardian said. "Some promises are shown, not spoken." Louis thought about that. "Like staying." "Yes," the Guardian said gently. "Like staying." Louis smiled. That evening the palace held a small gathering. Conversations filled the room and plans were discussed openly. Louis stayed calm. He listened, but he no longer shrank into himself. When someone spoke to him, he responded confidently. The Guardian noticed how Louis no longer looked around to see if he was being noticed. He already knew he mattered. As the night grew quiet, the Guardian returned to his usual position outside the sleeping area. He stood still, his posture firm, but his thoughts were peaceful. He thought about the years he had spent believing strength meant silence. He now understood that real strength allowed space for emotion, especially when protecting someone young. Inside the room, Louis lay awake for a short while, staring at the ceiling. But this time his thoughts were different. He remembered the Guardian's words. He remembered the moment he realized adults could feel too. It made him feel less alone. Eventually, sleep came easily. The next morning, something unexpected happened. As Louis prepared for the day, he paused and turned to the Guardian. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" the Guardian asked. "For not leaving," Louis replied. The Guardian felt his chest tighten again, but this time it was not pain, it was purpose. "I'm here," he said. "That won't change," Louis nodded, satisfied. Life inside the palace continued as it always did. Schedules were followed. Responsibilities were met. Change still existed and the future still held uncertainty. But one thing had shifted quietly and permanently. The Guardian no longer saw his role as only standing between danger and the child. He saw it as standing beside him, listening, understanding, being a steady presence in moments when the world felt too large. Prince Louis still had questions about the future. He still noticed changes, but now he knew he could speak. He knew his feelings had a place to go, and the Guardian, once trained never to show emotion, had learned something even more valuable. He had learned that protecting someone's heart could be just as important as protecting their life. On a quiet afternoon, as sunlight filled the hallway and everything felt momentarily still, the Guardian watched Prince Louis walk ahead with confidence. The boy turned back briefly and smiled. The guardian nodded in return. No words were needed. Both of them understood the promise that had been made, not in writing, not in ceremony, but in presence, trust, and quiet care. And in that understanding, both found strength.